everyone, and welcome to the Higher Estate, where we talk about all things cannabis and we bridge the gap between the medical world and the recreational world, lifestyle world, call it whatever. Some awesome guests with us, and we're going to get into her. Her name is Kelly Beker. She is an awesome humanitarian. She's heads up the Cannabis Educational Guild, and we'll talk about her as well. Get into what drives her, what's her passion, why she got into cannabis in the first place, and all the things she's doing around the world, which is kind of fucking outstanding. And I kind of can't wait to hear about it. We also, as usual, have awesome Janelle. She's here with us. Hey, Janelle, what's happening?
Hey guys, I'm good.
Yeah. How was your 420?
420 was good. It was a special one. Like it was literally 420, right? So had to commemorate it by partaking.
Would you partake with?
Well, I'm not gonna lie. I smoked.
What? You know what I think about smoking.
I know, but you know what? My boyfriend rolled a joint, and we actually had like the rolling paper, the 24 karat rolling paper, and that we had been saving for an occasion, and we felt like this would be a fitting one, so we went ahead and we did that.
That's pretty cool. You know what? I was on what's it called? What's the name of that Hamilton? They do the Rena Rampersad's her 420 show. I can't even remember the name right now. Rena, don't kill me. What's it called? What's it called? High Society Supper Clubs thing. Every they've had like 7 of them, and I can't remember what it's called. Like Canna Crawl. That's what it is. Hamilton's Canna Crawl. That's pretty cool. I was on there for a couple hours. We had a lot of fun. It was really hard this year, though, right? Like you couldn't be out in public. It was so
many virtual events to choose from too.
Yeah, and it was kind of a shit show. Everybody's like virtual events. They had like, they were broadcasting on two or 3 different Instagrams at one time. Everybody was kind of all over the place. It made it really, really difficult to follow. But still, I mean, everybody was out. We were all still having a pretty good time, and you got to see a lot more people. We still tried to stay pretty connected. No, were you on any events?
I actually didn't do any cannabis themed events. I was having such a hard time choosing that I ended up on IG Live for Versus, where Timbaland and Swiss Beats got Babyface.
Yeah.
To like sound off
on Riley's Instagram.
Yes.
Yeah, that was pretty sick. You know what? Derek showed that to me, and I was watching it for a couple hours. They had like 700,000 people on Instagram watching it. How insane was that?
Crazy as hell.
Yeah, Babyface was pretty cool. What'd you do, Kelly?
I didn't even know I was on yet. Hi, everyone.
You're totally on. You've been on the whole time. Everybody's here the whole time. We're all just hanging out. Hey, Kelly, what did you?
I actually had a really rewarding 420. A lot of the cannabis industry seemed to come together around ending hunger. So the Cannabis Education Guild was involved with an initiative in the US called 420 Chronic Relief. It was a large telethon all day. Whoopi Goldberg spoke, Tommy Chong, some musicians, and we just spoke about what we're doing for global cannabis education. And we also did something in Toronto, my backyard, my community, and we helped an organization called Feed It Forward, which rescues leftover food that's about to expire. And we created meals for the homeless. He does this like well before COVID. His name's Chef Jagger, truly inspirational. So myself and another Cannabis Education Guild member joined, and we helped get those meals ready for like thousands of homeless people.
That's amazing.
That is amazing. Where does one find out more about? I don't even know about this shit. Where do you find out about? Like, how do you get yourself involved? I want to hear all about this stuff. Like, you get.
I would love you to be involved, Ira and Janelle, and everyone watching. We call them social good missions. So depending on really like where there's an opportunity to help, not necessarily even monetary. Of course, you have to be comfortable with going outside. We kept our distance. We all wore masks. But
so you were outside.
I was on the front lines, and like I can't save lives in that way, but I could definitely help package meals at, a nice distance from somebody. And this is also food that's about to go into the garbage. Like all these suppliers of restaurants are calling up Chef Jagger. We have, kilos of seafood that's about to go in the garbage. He makes a stew, he freezes it, he distributes it around Nathan Phillips Square and all these different communities where there's homeless people gathering at night. And it's truly remarkable. So if anyone wants to get involved with these social good missions, yes, certainly contact info@cannabiseducationguild.com. This is going to be one of many. Because as you know, hunger was a problem before COVID, and it's going to be a problem after COVID. And
I'm not having a problem with hunger right now. I'm eating everything in sight right now, and it's driving me mad. But you're right. Like, I mean, in terms of like, maybe it's something that we should do, Janelle. Why don't we go out and like pack food?
Good. I'm all for helping those in need. And I think what Kelly mentioned is so important. And I think we've stressed it on the past few episodes that there's so many like societal issues that were happening pre-COVID that are still in existence, that despite the pandemic, we still have to help these people and consider their needs. So I think it's really involved.
Okay, but like, despite the pandemic, your hair looks like it's on point, Are you breaking, are you breaking quarantine to go get your hair did? Look, I've got a hat on today. By the way, it matches the yellow, and this thing's all fucked up in the back, but whatever. I got the hat on. I do have a shaved head, but how'd you get your hair done? If why is it looking all right? What's going on there? You're breaking quarantine.
The pandemic is definitely teaching us women all about DIY. Do it yourself, because we are the salons, the nail shops, everything is off limits right now. So Pinterest, your family members, you're hitting them up for the DIYs. But yeah, I just twisted it myself because I was like, I can't have my hair looking crazy.
Okay, you see this image here? I used to have dreads. Do you see that, Kelly? Are you looking at that?
Is that really you? Is that in your fish fan days?
That is really me. See, I can never get a reaction out of this woman. I've been trying to get a reaction out of Kelly that is like, wow, for over a year now. She's like the most stoic human to me ever. I'm gonna like always. I don't know why she does. I try everything I possibly can to be obnoxious and annoy the hell out of her, and she just doesn't fall for any of it. I don't get it.
Not to give you a reaction.
It drives me mad. Like, I was like expecting, wow, that's you. I look at your dreads, blah. She's like, oh yeah, yeah. Like,
I've seen a lot, Ira. I've seen a lot. It's hard to impress.
Jeez. You want to hear a funny story? So Derek asked me before, where did my dreads go? Yeah, you'll like this story, Kelly. So I used to play rugby, right? That was my sport, and we're going back a couple of years now. I came home from early spring practice. It was probably early March. It's still snowing, but we're still practicing. That was years ago. And the ground was soft, and I was practicing. I came home, and my head was a little bit itchy. And anybody that knows me knows that I have a phobia of spiders, bugs, crawling things, anything that moves that isn't bigger than a foot. I'm freaked the fuck out. I will run for the hills, and just thinking about it just gets to me. So I come home from a practice. I'm sitting on a couch, and this was in our house that on Mapleside back when I'm in Dundas now, but in other Hamilton. And I'm sitting on the couch, and I'm watching TV, and my head's itchy, and I'm like, Naz, call my wife over. I'm like, Naz, my head is like itchy. And I must have had a twig. I don't know what it was, but she's like, oh my God, something's in your head. I literally ran outside, had her run upstairs and get the clippers. Within 5 minutes, they were cut off. I'm like, how bad is that? It took me years to grow. We're going on I don't know. It was years and years to grow that, because my hair doesn't grow quick. Now I can't even get it to grow. This is what it looks like now. Now it's shaved right off. Look at that. No head. No hair.
Okay,
this is me right now. You know what I mean?
With a bald head.
Total bald head. Hey, listen, I feel like I'm on point wearing this hat today because, doctor wearing hat. I feel kind of cool. No? Kelly? What do you think about my
Yeah, I think you're certainly always cool.
see, I have no idea if she's even telling the truth when she talks. It's all, you hear what I'm saying, right, Janelle?
Yeah, I wasn't sure with that. I wasn't sure with that last comment. I was like, is she being honest?
Enough. Just be. I have no idea if she's being honest. I cannot tell with this woman. I feel like she's
cool, and we'll trust that.
Right. There's something about being an international lady of mystery that I'm not just going to crack and cave for you, Ira. Dreads or no dreads.
Oh, I love it. And finally, listen, where's your child right now, Janelle?
I been down in the basement with his dad. As like the past few episodes have been hiding out in the bedroom so he doesn't like run into the video. But I get so like cramped and hot, so I'm now in the dining room area that's a lot more light and airy, and I told him to stay in the basement.
How old is your son?
He's 4 years old.
Same age as my daughter, and honestly, like, I don't even know what to do anymore. I'm getting calls from the school, and they're like, "Yo, what can we do to make your life easier so that your kid can do this online teaching?" I'm like, "Come over to our house and teach them," because, like, honestly, I can't even do the work that they're doing, and there's so much going on. Anyway, that was fun. Well, I'm glad that we're all here now, and I'm not going to be doing the COVID corner anymore here. We're going to separate it. It just took too long, and it was boring me. So, and if I can bore myself, I know that there's something wrong. Kelly?
I think also sometimes it's nice to not talk about COVID. Like, it doesn't have to be our life. Right?
It's a good point. I mean, unfortunately, like, it's so hard to get away from it. But you know, it is, yeah, it definitely doesn't have to be, and doesn't have to be our focus of this thing. So, you know, just on a quick update for 30 seconds, we're still going up.
You can't resist.
I can't. I still see, that's the white coat. You see, I'm kind of like this mixture of a human. I've got the white coat that says, "Hey, he's a doctor," and I got a hat that says, you know, whatever. I'm just like I don't know. I'm like a mix of I'm like a mutt, really. Okay, so anyway, we're going up. Cases have doubled literally since last week, but we're certainly not overwhelmed. Our system has ventilators on ventilators. We were preparing in our own hospital for like 900 vents. You know what I mean? We have 194 people on vents in all of Ontario. So I think we're doing a pretty good job. There were 600 cases, I think, yesterday, 500 the day before. The cases are mounting, but we're definitely able to, in our region anyways. We're doing a pretty good job of keeping it at bay. That's all I'm going to say about that. Now, over to cannabis. We are going to be talking about cannabis around the world today because, you know, we got Kelly is our well-traveled human. She spends her life traveling around the world. But not funny enough, in news, I think one of the cool things is Lebanon. Like, how crazy is this? I found this article. Lebanon is the first Arab country to legalize cannabis cultivation, which is pretty cool. I mean, they're a pretty moderate country to begin with. Women can vote, and like women have pretty much as equal rights as it gets for that kind of region. You know, certainly familial rights, when it comes to familial rights, there's issues, but I mean, I think this is a pretty cool step. No, like, fuck, the world is evolving, and cannabis, this is what I always said. Cannabis is a true example of democracy. It's the people that drive the legalization. You know what I mean? It's not necessarily governments that drive it. And the people are asking, and the shit's happening. So I think it's kind of cool that that's happening. No?
I think it's definitely cool. Like, it gives, especially when you look at it from like an economic standpoint, the cultivation of cannabis allows a new industry to start. It allows for people to have jobs, exportation, money coming into the economy. So from that standpoint, like, it's great for any country. And like you said, when the people mobilize for a new industry to happen, it's amazing.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cool, especially like, you know, for Lebanon, of all countries in the world to do it. You've got Lebanon, like, right on. Way to go, Lebanon. We back you strong. Kelly, there it is. Let's see it.
Lebanon.
Yeah. Gotta be strong. Now, last thing on this thing is, in Mexico, hey, people are talking out everywhere, right? You know what I mean? This isn't even news. I just found this really funny. Abbey Road, and this funny. We always talk about ethical. It's ethical. So here we've got Mexican farmers are growing cartel-free ethical weed. I wonder what makes shit ethical. Like, it's ethical, blood-free
cannabis.
Okay. I mean, is that true? I hope so. It sounds really cool. I just love the word ethical involved with this. Like, if for something to be okay, as long as you put the word ethical, it's okay. You're ethically non-monogamous. It's ethical, so it's okay. Anyway, it's funny. This is so cannabis is now, ethical. Anyway, I thought it was funny. Nobody else thinks I'm funny. Honestly.
What's interesting about it is like, what are the cartels like sitting back and thinking? Like, how I'm just so curious. Like, it's so interesting that they had so much control over that industry, and now it's ethical and cartel free. But like, are the cartels just like laying in wait for like their moment, or like what's going on?
Well,
interesting.
It's an interesting point. I'll tell you, I sat at a meeting with some government officials from Mexico probably 2 years ago now, when they were thinking about getting into the cultivation and distribution and all this stuff. When medical cannabis became legal in Mexico, it's probably been about 2 years that it's been legal in Mexico. And I actually asked that question before they said it was ethically cartel free. How are they growing it, and what are the cartels? And to be honest, they were saying, the cartels have an infrastructure already to grow the stuff. Yeah. So the cartels were growing it. They were selling it to the government, or to maybe not to the government. I don't know, to whomever. And then those people would sell it retail, face forward. Cartels just wanted to grow it. I think at some point you have to involve all walks of life. And, if it can bring peace, if cannabis can bring peace between factions and groups, why the fuck not? The same thing in Colombia with legalizing. If they ever legalized the coca leaf, you'd probably have a lot of end of war there. You let the cartels grow the coca leaf and let everybody, and then sell it, and then they can sell it. Everybody sells it off. You just legalize it, and it's boom, you're good. I don't know. That's just my thought. Kelly.
Well, it was interesting. I was in Mexico last year, and I found that none of the locals knew that it had been legalized for medical purposes, nor had they heard of CBD.
Right.
So I don't know if the people have really received the message, but you could also argue that in Canada, many people don't even know how to access legal cannabis, or that, Shoppers Drug Mart can get you medical cannabis. Like,
is that true? Do you think that people are still super uninformed?
Yes, absolutely. I just think of like my parents' friends, like they still ask me like, well, how do I get it? Or like they realize they can Google and go to one of the stores, but they don't know that the OCS is a channel. Like, it's just not mainstream enough.
Yeah, I speak to like regular folk, and there's like a understanding that it's legal, yes, but I think, to what Kelly's saying, a lot of people don't even understand the network, the nitty gritty details of it. And I mean, even when you come down to knowing like the difference between strains, like some people don't even know what CBD is versus THC. Like, that's a conversation I've had to have numerous times to explain to people. So I think so. Yeah, I've had that conversation so many times, and it's not just with older people. It's even with people like my own age and younger. A lot of people just don't know the difference, like that, CBD is different. CBD is not, doesn't give you the psychoactive, isn't psychoactive and stuff like that. So I think as much as it's legal, there's still a lot of work to be done as far as education goes.
Really, I find that so interesting, and maybe it's because I'm just like so involved in and the people that I'm surrounded by know about cannabis. But even like my patients seem to know about it now, and I'm almost like, fuck, I'm over it because everybody knows about it. But anyway, that brings us to Kelly. Yeah. Kelly Beker.
I want to start with a question. If you're over cannabis, what are you into now?
Shit. I'm not over cannabis. Okay. So it's not that I'm over cannabis. I love cannabis. Cannabis is forever going to be something that I had, a footprint in helping, bring to the forefront, specifically in medicine. But, I feel like, maybe it has, has it been played out? That's a question that I was going to ask you. Has it been played out? And we're moving on. I think what I've done is moved into more of a holistic approach, and I'm looking at plant-based medicine now, and not just at cannabis anymore. I'm starting to look at psilocybin and LSD, which isn't LSD not being plant-based, but and psychedelics and that kind of stuff, and looking at a well-rounded approach where cannabis, we needed to look at it very specifically. But but Kelly, you brought it back to the point where, and so Janelle, you did as well. Maybe it's not played out. Maybe I'm just, in terms of education, and that brings me to, and maybe I'm just super like unicentric, looking at myself in my own little world, and that brings me to and that's, see, all of a sudden I get a smile out of Kelly when I see she's like, see, this fucking woman. Yeah, I get it. Well, you're talking about yourself again, Ira. Now all of a sudden Kelly smiles. She's like, oh, finally some insight. Listen now, Kelly, I got you. All right. I know. All right. Let's talk to Kelly, though. Kelly Beker is the executive director of the Cannabis Educational Guild. She has worked for multiple NGOs. She's even built some schools in East Asia. Yeah.
Southeast Asia, yes.
Okay, Southeast Asia. I'm horrible at geography, but I'm getting there. She talks a lot about emerging European markets and East Asian markets, Southeast Asian markets. She's been all over the world. Kelly, first, before we even get to this photo, keep that photo up there. But Kelly, I want to know, like, tell me about you. How did you get into cannabis? Why did you start in cannabis? Where did you grow up? Fuck.
I grew up in Toronto, in Thornhill, right near you. We're not quite the same age, so our paths don't cross.
You're older than me.
It's all the cannabis, yes. That's why I look older than you. So I was living abroad in Cambodia, where I co-founded a school there and lived, and came back to Canada to fundraise to keep the school running on an island called Koh Rong, where they previously didn't have a school.
Why did you go to Cambodia?
I was teaching in South Korea as kind of a lost graduate who wanted to travel and see the world, but have like a little bit of purpose. And I had worked with kids my whole life, so that was fine, teaching them English. I speak Korean, 한국말 조금 알아요. So that was a valuable skill to pick up in Korea. 네 means yes. And from there, I traveled around Asia on my holidays, and really just the poverty in Southeast Asia started chipping away at my heart. And you're partying and you're having the time of your life on the beach, full moon parties. And there's these kids coming up to you at 3 a.m. selling flowers. They're like 7-year-olds holding a 1-year-old. And you're like, how is this even possible? We see homelessness in Toronto. We see lots of poverty, but never children. So
how'd that make you feel, seeing that while you were on the other side?
It really broke my heart completely. I'm exposing to you, Ira. I was sad, but I felt very driven to do something about it. So I ended up on this. I wanted to tour around the country and see where my efforts would be best put to use. I thought with an established NGO, and I ended up on this island called Koh Rong. It was like Thailand 30 years ago. Tourism was just starting, and all the kids were playing on the beach with tourists. And I just said to the locals, like, if your kids speak English and use computers in 10 years, they will work in the hotels and they won't be selling drugs or flowers or bracelets on the beach or their bodies. So we started a school, and the whole village really came together, and we had a clinic as well. We had nurses at the time there from Italy, and we were, getting these locals ready for tourism. And now, like, the first road has been built around the island. The hotels are being built. Like, it's a reality. And when I came back to Canada to just focus on fundraising so we could have Cambodian staff run it, because that's what you want to be a sustainable organization, is when the legal medical cannabis market was really kicking off here. And a friend of mine was at MedReleaf, and he was like, you care about cannabis? Like, why don't you? No, actually.
What?
And I was like, yeah, I really do care about cannabis, but I thought more in a recreational way. I never realized I was self-medicating. I had heard it's good for cancer patients, but like that was the extent to my knowledge. And, you know, walking through the MedReleaf facility that first day, I could not believe the level of, you know, quality, the standards,
Professionalism, the
the
change.
cameras, the team, the thought that went behind which yields, which clones, like it was next level. And starting to talk to patients and doctors, like I focused on fundraising for Cambodia, but I also was very driven to help patients in Canada. So that's when I started kind of straddling the globe and doing both. But I guess it
When
was like that was like summer 2015. So
Wow.
MedReleaf was one of the, I don't know, top 10 to get their license. And it was incredible. And similar to my experience starting the school in Cambodia, it was startup life. So it was wear many hats, you know, on the road with Alex Revich. Now you're making marketing materials. Now you're on phones. Now you're, you know, giving a doctorate
to cannabis, though. Why the shift into cannabis? It seems like your passion, your passion was for creating, I guess, creating things for people and finding, you know, areas that of injustice maybe and or areas of growth and working through them. I understand that, you know, you see this poverty and you see people like working in this environment or living in an environment where you have so much, and then you see people that have so little and you're trying to help build for them. But what was and that makes total sense. So your drive for cannabis, did you use cannabis when you were younger? Like, what was your drive into that? And I guess you haven't left the NGO scene clearly, but what was your drive into cannabis?
Yeah.
It's a great question. I guess I left out a piece of the story. So maybe my third week sitting in the MedReleaf facility, talking to angry patients on the phone who were just like, where's my package? Why hasn't Canada Post delivered it? And I was thinking about these kids who, you know, every day there was a different challenge and we were trying to get food or clothes on their back or convince their parents that they need to go to school, like really meaningful work. And it just felt like, I know cannabis is important as a medicine, but I'm not feeling the same drive I felt to help like these, you know, serious issues of poverty. And a scientist at MedReleaf, her name's Hale, she comes from Iran, she used to study poppies. She calls me into her office and she's like, look, Kelly, people in Africa and Thailand are studying cannabis as a treatment for malaria. And it was just like, mind is blown. What do you mean? So I realized there's this global picture, and I had seen it growing everywhere in Southeast Asia and India when I was traveling and volunteering. So I was like, of course, this is going to like not only impact them and their quality of life as patients, but like the socioeconomic impact is too massive. So I stuck it out in Canada for 5 years, had the most amazing time. I don't mean it in a negative way.
And that's not you though, because you're a traveler. You're not, you're like.
But it's more about being the bridge, Ira. Like people think, oh, you're so lost. No, I feel found when I can like drive the resources and expertise and money from Canada to these amazing causes. And I think that cannabis aligning with some of these developing countries that are starting to legalize, it will position Canada to help lift these countries out of poverty and as well, you know, help Canada as we grow our global industry.
Was it your first encounter with like true poverty was when you were in Southeast Asia and you were doing this thing and you saw these kids? Was that your first encounter with poverty, and that really was like the major change?
Yeah, I would say so. Like I had volunteered with organizations in Toronto, but more like Canadian Foundation for AIDS research, a little bit more like condition specific, and still like first world fundraising. So like galas, everything was beautiful. There's nothing wrong with that. I organized galas, but it was just being on the ground in the village, like going around shack to shack, pulling these kids out of their house, making them realize you come to school every day. Like, this is not universal knowledge. Teaching them to brush their teeth, teaching them to wash their hands after they go to the washroom. Like, we think these things are universally taught, and they're just not. So it felt like more of like a mission, and like being that bridge. So I think it's not about necessarily traveling. It's about driving like purpose in my work and my skills.
I agree with you. And you know, I'm sorry if you thought when I said, you know, you're a world traveler and you're a restless soul. I don't think that's negative. I actually think that's so super fucking positive.
Yeah.
You know, I think all of us here are restless souls, and we're always searching for something to fulfill that, you know, that need, that drive. And so like, and for you not to want to stay here and to always want to be traveling isn't a bad thing. That's a fucking awesome thing. And I think most people just want to do that. I don't know about you, Janelle. Like, you know, like how badly do you want to travel right now? You know what I mean?
I want to travel so badly, but I think it's amazing when people travel with purpose. It's one thing. And don't get me wrong. I think having a vacation and just like shooting the shit and like putting all your cares away and just kind of enjoying yourself is great. But I think there's something to be said about when you travel and you travel with a purpose. You go to a country not to exploit it, but to add to it and to help it grow. I think that's amazing. And I think a lot of us can learn from that. And I mean, take something away from it. For me personally, I have my son and I haven't done a lot of traveling with him yet because I just realized that he's not at an age where he can really understand and appreciate it. And when I take him across the globe or, you know, to different places, I want him to be able to see and understand what is happening in these countries and to have like meaningful conversations with him. So it's not just, you know, useless travel or like just vanity. But I mean, that's just me personally.
I think it's wonderful. So then you found your passion in cannabis because you saw that, you know, it can impact, and cannabis has that ability. That's why I love the fucking cannabis world. It's a medicine, it's a lifestyle, it's a lifesaver, it's a world changer. It can do so much good. So you find your passion to continue in cannabis because you hear that it has the ability to change other people's lives. And actually, you know, there's a thing that you said in your, I was reading your bio and it said, you know, you're a, what is it called? A social impact leader, right?
Correct.
And that's kind of cool, right? Like you're a social impact leader. So you're working for, you start off in cannabis, you're working for MedReleaf, and eventually, you know, that's great and all, and you decide to leave MedReleaf. And did you do that because, you know, aside from all the politics of working with industry and all the shit that we can see and like, and I mean, I just don't take you as somebody who follows rules all that well or listens to anybody at all aside from your and it's good. You know, if you got an internal voice that says, you know, that has a good ethical, I'm going to use the word ethical, that has a good ethical guide, then why the hell not, you know, and just follow it. So you leave and you go off again to heal the world. I want to know why you keep, I mean, healing the world is awesome. That tikkun, that healing, you're right. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's actually a MedReleaf partner.
Well, tikkun, I mean, it's actually a concept that dates back thousands of years that somebody may have exploited for industrial purposes. But anyways, great idea. An Israeli company came up with it. MedReleaf ties into it. They have their own, you know, right. There you go.
This is the old
so you're now working with on your own and you're still being a social impact leader and where do you go? Tell me what happens from there. You go on to start this cannabis educational guild and then you hang out in Southeast Asia again for a whole bunch of months. What do you like what drives that woman to do all these things? You know, I mean, poverty is one thing, seeing poverty is one thing, but taking an active stance in it, like you spending time away from your family that much is not such an easy thing, you know? So, you know, like, what are you seeing out there?
So I guess to conclude the journey of the Canadian cannabis industry, I was part of MedReleaf and Aurora, and my focus changed to the adult use market, and that was fun and all.
Yeah,
but
bored you. Nah, that's not your shit.
I learned a lot. I met a lot of fabulous people through a lot of fabulous parties, but I was thinking about this global social impact of cannabis, and I left in August on a one-way to Korea because I was speaking at one of the first ever educational events they were having at a university. So that was really awesome. I got to brush up on my Korean skills and wow them a little bit with my Korean knowledge. Fun fact, the word for cannabis in Korean is tema.
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 Yeah. Tema. So we did our first Tema event.
And then, in China.
Huh? Yeah, exactly. Exactly. There are definitely similarities between the languages. And from there, it was just like an Asian whirlwind. I was going around, I was doing education. I spoke at the first cannabis conference in the Philippines, and people thought I was crazy. People are still killed for cannabis possession in the Philippines. I'm like, it's at the Marriott, it'll be fine. And people didn't come because they were worried.
Why?
People are shot for cannabis.
No, but why are you willing to go do that?
I think it's just a calling. It's a duty. I've had this experience before of acting like a community bridge builder of sorts. So I was like, I have this gift of 5 years of cannabis knowledge. Why wouldn't I be taking it to these emerging markets, especially for the socioeconomic potential, if they can embed that social impact into their regulations from the beginning of the industry? Then maybe every farmer has to grow X amount of hemp to make protein for the kids to have at school every day, so that there's less malnutrition and stunting in children. These types of things can be thought out now that Canada is a mature industry. We can learn from us.
Do you think that are you taking some of these things that we've learned here back there and just building on them, or do you think that we totally fucked it up and it can be done better elsewhere?
I think we did a good job. We had no playbook to follow. We did the best that we could with there being no benchmark. We created the benchmark. So a lot of countries that don't know the details of what's going on here really look to Canada as leaders, and we certainly are in many different ways, but can they do better and build upon it? For sure. And is it a completely different situation when you're only doing outdoor growing and they don't have the expertise for processing and manufacturing? But if they can get to that place with Canadian industry, American industry helping out, I would love to see them really leading in hemp textile processing, or hempcrete for sustainable housing. I'm thinking about
hempcrete's a really cool idea.
It's amazing.
Is a really fucking
I'm
awesome
thinking about
idea.
it from the whole plant perspective, not when I say cannabis can end world suffering, I don't mean just the cannabinoids, the drug variety. I mean the plant in its entirety, its multi-purposes, and how it's going to reduce our carbon footprint and make us healthier and nicer human beings.
You're on a mission to end world suffering. That's that's you.
That's me.
Yeah, that's you. You're that's pretty cool that you want to do that. So you're over in Southeast Asia, over in Korea. So you're over in.
I was over there. I was, at the same time, a good friend in the industry, cannabis consultant Jen Larry. She was building.
Shout out Jen.
Shout out to Jen. Woo!
Now there's another one. It's
She's
I
really
call
the
these two are my sisters. They just basically just hit. See, look. See, she's talking about herself again. Look, that makes her smile. Huh?
No, I want to talk about Jen and how amazing this all came to be.
Jen is awesome. Okay,
Jen's awesome. Jen Larry. So she put together with a bunch of cannabis industry experts this education platform, the Guild. And it was about equalizing the playing field. It was about new people coming to the industry and not being bullied for knowing less than, anyone who's been around for 5, 10, 20 years, and making it about healthy cannabis discourse, which is so important so that everyone can work together. And you were bullied?
Were you bullied?
Was I bullied? No, I think I received good karma in the industry because I was pretty inclusive. And I felt that if anybody was new, I wanted to like teach them everything that I was taught. So we just figured this is a great way to start educating Canadians that wanted to get into the sector. And I was in Asia reviewing the content. She asked me to come on board as the executive director because I care so much about education, whether that's like Cambodian kids or, you know, doctors learning about cannabis. And I was going through the content and it was fabulous. And I was like, we need to bring this to Asia. Every doctor I'm meeting, every member of government, they need this. They need this right now. And she was like, you're crazy. Most of Asia is not even legal. What are you talking about? And I was like, no, let's take the content and do live events around Asia. So we partnered with an incredible doctor in Malaysia, Dr. Edwin Chang, and he helped us gather the medical community as well as different investors, members of government, key opinion leaders. And in January, we threw like over 200-person event of a full day cannabis symposium called the Asian Medical Cannabis Symposium. And it wasn't just Malaysians in the room. Also, Malaysia is a Muslim country, so this was just crazy that it was going down. But other people flew in. We had people from 5 different countries: the Philippines, Korea, Singapore, Indonesia. And
throw up that photo. Throw up that photo of that first photo there that we were looking at. No, I guess that first one is you building something, building a school.
That was me in Cambodia, yeah.
Yeah, this one here. Where's this?
So this was the event I'm talking about in Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur. And these are all doctors in Malaysia. People came from outside of the city as well. And what's incredible is that these 2 women approached me on the break, and they're gynecologists. And they're like, we really want to look into some research around cannabis for endometriosis. And I said, that's amazing, because guess what? That's why I have a prescription. I will tell every man.
You know, I have.
It's
you
the
know,
best
I was
thing
gonna.
for period cramps.
I have a whole protocol for a women's health study looking at cannabis for endometriosis, but it never got off the ground.
Talk about that offline, but yes, these doctors just, you know,
won't talk about that offline. Don't fucking talk about it now. Just kidding.
All right. Okay. Let's get into it. I'm sure all your male viewers really want to dive deep into menstrual pain.
They sure do. They sure do. Makes life a lot easier. Yeah. Okay. So go on.
Oh, anyway, it was just incredible to see that, you know, English was something that brought all these different Asian countries together. Cannabis, Jen and I being from Canada, bringing this like non-biased, like we had no sponsors, like it was just straight up neutral education. And we talked about hemp, and we talked about, you know, investing in a new tomorrow and different strategies for them to think about this industry. And that then warranted us a visit to the Malaysian Minister of Health. The next day we were in his office and sharing some really exciting stuff with him and his task force.
Is this the event that you put this event on?
As the Cannabis Education Guild, yes. And so we're growing members now. We're actually still in beta. We're working with commercial groups in Canada, but the live online platform will be live in May. So if you go to cannabiseducationguild.com, you can become a member very soon. And so these people who learned with us as well are members. So now we have members that have learned with us in Malaysia, Thailand, Korea, all over Asia, Jamaica, and Canada, and these
around the world like this, because now you seem to be in a bunch of countries. Do you notice any major challenges with disseminating the information or just being allowed to educate people in comparison to like somewhere like North America?
Great question. We obviously tread very carefully, always get approvals from, you know, flyers or venues based off of our local, you know, partners, because you can't come into a foreign country and think that you know the customs and the way they would go about inviting people, or it's telling certain stakeholders versus others, or how they disseminate the news. So I think it's really crucial when you're going into foreign markets that you tread carefully with the right boots on the ground, because, you know, you don't want to ever come in and be telling them. You want to be educating with them.
Amazing.
So where's the educational guild headed now? And are you focused on, we're so like I said before, I'm so focused on the world around me. It's hard, and we all are. It's hard to see what's happening in other parts of the world. This woman, like right here, she was literally getting on a plane in the middle of COVID. She's a boss woman. I mean, like you really are. I'm still trying to figure out, your drive, and I see the passion around trying to create better lives for other people, and things that you've seen throughout your travels that probably shaped who you are today because of those travels, where you were so fortunate to have so much, and then going to these places and seeing people that have so little driving you. I think it's wonderful. And, but we're stuck here. And what I see here is, people that have all this education, and that, the education is kind of getting out there. Whereas Southeast Asia, wherever that is, on a map somewhere, boop. I did horrible in geography. It took me years to get out of it. I much preferred history. And it took me 7 years to get out of high school. I still became a doctor, just saying. Where is the educational guild going? Are you focused out there? Are you focused here? Where's your focus? What's the future for this thing?
Well, we are a global platform for cannabis education and social good. So we definitely have focus in terms of providing credible, valuable content from leading experts around the world. But it's not limited to anyone. If you're a medical professional overseas, if you're a independent student who's graduating and wants to get into the industry, we're really open to educating anyone who wants to learn. There's a lot of content. You have to commit at least 10 hours to going through the modules, to listening to the videos of the experts, taking all the quizzes and passing. But we really believe that if you have this base foundation of knowledge, you'll have the confidence to engage in industry discussion. You will feel like you have acquired a clearer lens and, be part of a growing industry. And I think what's amazing about some of the stuff that's coming soon, the webinars and like online forums we're going to have, is that we're bringing together some of the best minds in the industry. So, that the medical professionals can learn from one another, almost like a think tank, like an industry think tank.
Do you think that education, so you actually mentioned two things. You said you do education and social good. Before I get it, what do you mean by that? Education is one thing, social good. Are you trying to combine your NGO work with this guild, and like what
Absolutely. You nailed it. So why would we be an enterprise when we could be a global social enterprise? So we are giving 20% of all our profits, whether that's through coming to one of our events or special programs or logging in and becoming an online member. All those profits are going to a fund that we're raising money for social good. And I'm not going to dive into the details of the initiatives right now, but it definitely includes a lot of serious work with some volunteers. Like I was mentioning, if anyone wants to be part of these social good missions, they can, ranging from helping to end hunger to helping, victims who have been human trafficked. Like we're really covering a lot of areas of suffering because we believe that cannabis is this tool for good. It has an ethos of healing. So let's profit off the plant and do something good and inspire the industry along the way to also maybe operate more ethically.
Got to use the word.
Got to use the word. So I think, we're really a global social enterprise. So we have focus in the content and the messages we're delivering, but we want this to also be a vehicle to really make some serious social impact through cannabis.
What's your message? Your personal Kelly message in this world. What's your personal message? If you had to choose one message out of all this stuff that you've seen and done, and one thing that you're trying, I know it puts you on the spot a little bit and you probably hadn't thought about it. But like what is Kelly's goal? If you could say one thing about what your goal is now in life, let's say, or message to people, what would it be?
I believe that we all have an ability inside of us to be an agent for change. And that could be in a micro, everyday way by making people smile, sending a thoughtful text to someone having a hard time. You're changing their day, you're changing their moods, you're a change agent. I think that the more you do it in the micro ways, you can lift it up to strangers and your community and the world. So, step into this new way of working with one another and how we treat one another. And I think that I'm really on a mission to see cannabis as a sector operate differently, business as unusual, and that means a slavery-free cannabis industry. That means one that doesn't have bullying or discrimination. It's inclusive, and I think it's going in a great direction so far. So, agents for change. We're all change agents.
I love that message. Be an agent for change. Yeah, positive change. So that's really cool. I see you here in this photo. I don't know. Looks like you're harvesting cannabis for somebody,
Yes.
And you have a big ass smile on your face underneath that mask.
Absolutely.
Is that what's going on here? That's looks like
smiling.
It. And that's I know, being an agent for change. That's really important. Last question to you. What's that?
Said I would be smiling too if I had that in my hand.
Yeah, so would I. I think everybody would be at this point. Jeez. Last question: is education dead? Has not dead? Maybe that's not the right way. Has it been? We were talking about earlier. Has it been played out? I don't. I was like, maybe not. Where do you think the opportunity for educating is right now? Maybe that's a better question.
I think there's lots of opportunity in educating people and really tailoring the education to their unique needs. So if you're a health and safety group versus, a member of government versus a mom deciding what to do with their parent or their child debating cannabis treatment, I think the education needs to just be tailored to fit the group's needs or the individual's needs rather than a one size fits all, this is everything you need to know. So that's what we really are trying to do, keeping it dynamic, keeping a hybrid style of learning. And I don't think it's dead. Is learning dead, Ira? I think people constantly...
I'm a lifelong learner.
Exactly.
I went to McMaster.
People want to evolve, and there's no better time than COVID to be doing some education and isolation and learn some new skills. And we've made it very approachable and casual so that it welcomes anyone. English can be their second language. We've made it, very user friendly. And I think that if people want to better themselves and continue to grow their minds, there will forever be opportunities. It's about how you position it and what's unique about your education that you're bringing to the market.
That's so true. Absolutely agree.
Thanks, Janelle.
Right. I'm going to agree.
Strong.
I'm going to agree. Janelle, you were talking just earlier on. I want to get to the news, but before that, you were saying earlier on, there's still people that don't have that education out there. I mean, I just find it, I guess I've been doing it for a decade now, and I'm just, I don't know if am I tired? I don't know what it is.
That have used cannabis for years and don't actually know about it from like a plant perspective. There are people who use it on a daily basis, but they don't understand the cannabinoids. They don't understand THC versus CBD or having the balance, and they don't even understand strains. I know people who smoke and they don't even know what strain they're smoking.
Right. I'm going to just interject there and say, let's not smoke. Let's just vape, but vape flower. Nothing that actually, if it moves, probably not great. It's not its natural form.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So even when it comes down to vaping, just using cannabis in general, they're using the buds to then create butter or oil for edibles. They don't know you know, the THC component. They don't know CBD. They have no understanding of that. And I find myself educating people quite often. I mean, I had a conversation even with my boyfriend's father most recently, where he didn't even realize that CBD wasn't psychoactive.
Right.
He believes that every part of the cannabis plant is, you know, it will get you high, and you know, he thinks of it in a negative manner. And like, I had to have that conversation where like, nope, there's actually medical applications, and you know, go in depth with him. And I find those type of conversations, I'm having them more often than not, which means a lot of this education isn't trickling down to the masses.
You know, first of all, I guess that's so true. And also, people, getting high is not necessarily a bad thing. As a physician, putting my physician hat on, you know, when we look at what medication does for us, living a better quality of life isn't a bad thing. And if feeling euphoric helps you live a better quality of life, then so be it, man. Like, nothing wrong with that. It's somehow anything that doesn't toe the line seems to get people, you know, all up in arms, or gets governments and gets, you know, policymakers up in arms. And I think maybe one of the major reasons that it does that is because you can't control somebody who's, you know, a free thinker and feels good. You got to keep people down. And if they're not feeling good, it's a good way to keep them down and say, oh, we're the only people that can make you feel better. But if that's not the case, you know, then you have a whole other, you know, then governments and policymakers have free thinkers on their hands, and free thinkers aren't what people want. That's not, when you're trying to institutionalize something, you don't want free thinkers. You want people towing the line. I don't think anybody in this room is towing the line. Kelly, do you toe? Kelly doesn't toe anything.
It's debatable. But I also just want to add to your question about, you know, if education's dead.
Yeah.
I think it will live a very long life in the cannabis industry, because this is a new sector and we're learning every day about new cannabinoids and terpenes and what the hemp plant can do to make the world greener. But it's about relearning or unlearning this stigma of 70 years. Yeah. So it's a long road ahead. So we can say education's dead, and we've all undone the learning and the stigma. So
good point.
How
I guess you must have seen that over, down in Southeast Asia. Like, Janelle, you asked her the question, what was, what's it like doing this education? Are you afraid to go and do this education? Like, what is the stigma like over there, and how much, you know, the opportunity? It looks like from that photo I looked at, you know, people, the people are really happy with it. The doctors want in on it, which is amazing. Here, it never started from that. It was definitely not a top down. It looks like those physicians really wanted it. Like, were you afraid going there?
I really wasn't, but I guess, you know, like years in Cambodia and time alone in India, like I have built up some thick skin. I knew we were working alongside local doctors, so that made me feel more comfortable. And I wasn't selling product. I was just bringing information, a lot of studies. We had some of our guild experts video call in. So it wasn't just me standing there, and we were working alongside the locals. And I get the sense that they're very hungry for the information, and you should be excited, Ira, and you should get out of your, Hamilton bubble, because the world needs this information and will for the next, decade at least.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's a North American bubble, because I've been spending, a decade educating in North America, and not so much overseas. Yeah, I've spent, I've done some work with, Brazil and in Israel, but like definitely haven't got over into Asia or Europe. And so it's really great to have your insight today, even though you give me a hard time all the time, but you're a really wonderful person. And honestly, at the end of the day, be an agent for change. I love what your message is there. Be an agent for positive change. I guess we can be an agent for shitty change, and we don't need any more shitty change. Like COVID was a shitty change. Now we're all inside. I don't want you to be an agent for COVID. Be an agent for positive cannabis change. Be a good influence. I love that.
Influence. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think be a change agent is positive. Like, I don't think you changing for the negative. You're not an agent for anything. Then you're sabotaging.
True.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Kelly, thank you so much for being, for coming on here and talking to us about what you've done with your life. It seems like fucking awesome, tremendous. I do have my swear jar. I swear I'm trying. Honestly, guys, I promise you. And Mom, I promise you, I am trying not to. I'm not really. I guess I can't promise you. I do swear a lot. It just is what it is. You got to get over it. And Kelly, thank you so much. We're not done yet because, Janelle, I want to hear what's going on in the news.
Sure.
Anything?
So one of the interesting stories that are out today is that there is actually a hospital in Israel that is testing how cannabis can actually, well, more specifically CBD, can be used in the treatment of COVID-19. So as we probably already know, inflammation is actually a huge part when it comes to the symptoms that you experience. So they're actually testing out using CBD to reduce the inflammation associated with COVID-19. So that's a study that's going on there. They're using moderately ill people to test it out on. And I guess we'll hear about the results shortly.
I'd like to hear about that. There was a study done probably in 2013. I love studies. There was a study done in 2013, putting my doctor hat on. I got to take this off and go put on my gas mask because that's what all doctors have to wear these days is fucking gas masks when we go to work. So we've exchanged the stethoscope for a gas mask, basically. But anyway, I digress. Squirrel. In 2013, there was a study that was done looking actually at THC mostly as a anti-inflammatory in patients that had severe infections that we call sepsis, looking at what it did to the markers of inflammation, specifically things called cytokines and interleukin. These are things that these are markers that cause inflammation. And one of the findings was that it actually caused what we call apoptosis of those specific markers, which means it blew up those markers and decreased the inflammatory process. So it'll be interesting to hear what this study comes out with. That's for sure. Definitely, just to let people know, it's not a medicine that we should be using currently to treat the symptoms of SARS-CoV-2, otherwise known as COVID. So we shouldn't be using it, just yet, unless it makes you feel good. That may be the only other reason to use it, but don't smoke it. Not because this is a respiratory issue. Okay, yeah. Yep.
So the Ontario Cannabis Store has been in operation for a little over a year, and they actually did a customer preference survey. So they did a survey with the customer, with a group, with a portion of the customers that they sent out, and it kind of asked people questions about their preferences in terms of buying and using cannabis. And it was pretty interesting, some of the top responses that came back. So when asked what the top three preferences, when they smoked, most people said they preferred rolling a joint. Second to that was smoking a bowl. So
I'm losing. I'm losing the battle. What the?
Pre-rolls aren't as popular as I would have thought. Most people actually prefer rolling their own joint.
Why am I losing?
They want to see the weed. That's why.
Is that it? Is that people want to see it?
So when asked for other options for using cannabis, most people said that they were interested in chocolate, infused chocolate. And then oils and teas kind of lagged behind. But most people were either they wanted to smoke or they wanted to eat it in chocolate form.
Really? So edibles are... Listen, I want to know why I'm losing. Why, Kelly, you said people want to see the weed. What do you mean?
What's inside that joint? What does the bud look like? Is it, your schwaggity swag trimmings, or is it, crystally green budlets? Like, I don't know if it's just pre-rolled. And the ritual factor. People like a certain paper, a certain filter. They like to do it themselves.
The ritual
addiction. The addiction, whenever we talk about addiction and mental health with cannabis, addiction doesn't present like your traditional addiction to like crack or cocaine or heroin, where it's like, here, I'll give you $100 or an 8-ball. And they're like, I'll take the 8-ball. Cannabis guys will be like, yeah, I want the $100 and then go buy weed with it. But a ritualized, addiction where I got to use my favorite pre-roll or my favorite rollies. I got to go to my favorite corner and use my favorite bong with my favorite homies and do like whatever. That's how addiction presents. So maybe we got to break that. That's what we're trying to break. I've been trying to break that for a decade. I'm getting nowhere. Damn it.
Old
So
habits.
you strictly vape, you never smoke?
Don't ask me that question. Don't ask me that. Of course listen, Kelly, I do once in a while. I'll smoke for sure. Like I think most people do every so often, but for the most part, 99% of the time, 0.5, I am vaping. And, because, the reason why I do it, one of the major reasons why I do it is, I talk about mindful consumption all the time, and cannabis people who work in the cannabis industry are always talking about the health benefits, and we talk about all the healthy parts to it and all this shit. So if we're going to talk about the health benefits to it, why the fuck are we smoking it?
Right.
And just like, if we know that combustion isn't good for you, but yet it's like, oh, let's smoke a joint here and at the same time talk about the health benefits. It doesn't work. Doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? Like, you gotta, if you're gonna walk the walk, talk the talk, walk the walk. And okay. And so for the most part, that's what I do.
But then can I ask you a question as a doctor?
Yes.
Is there a format where the bioavailability is as great as smoking it?
The bioavailability of smoking is the worst. Bioavailability of smoking a joint is about 10%. The bioavailability of vaping is about 50%. So the bioavailability is a lot higher when you vape than when you smoke. When you smoke, you lose most of it to combustion and side stream. And which you don't do when you vape. You actually save yourself a ton of money because you get about 30% more, 30 to 40% more when you vape. I'm just going to drop the mic. Boop.
Yeah, but for people who have been smoking it, this is like not just my own opinion from talking to patients. Like, you don't get high enough. You don't get the same.
So I'll tell you why. Yeah. So I get
that question.
Why.
I'm just telling you why the trend is smoking.
But when I tell people, I get that all the time. People tell me, I feel so much higher. That initial high I only get when I smoke a joint, and I don't get with vaping. The reason that you get that is because when you are smoking a joint, you're getting an anoxic brain injury from combustion. So the CO2 buildup in your brain and the lack of oxygen to your brain makes you lightheaded and you feel really high. That combined with the cannabis, you feel double high. Try holding your breath, you'll get the same fucking feeling. So, that's what happens when you feel that extra high from smoking a joint versus vaping. So, I mean, you don't want to do it. Just saying.
Well, another interesting point that actually came
That's a case.
from that survey was that
that? Okay, let's go to the survey.
People actually prefer cannabis with higher levels of THC. So most of respondents, that was about 46%, said that they prefer cannabis with more than 20% THC.
Oh, yeah. So I believe that. And Kelly, I think that's true. I do think that, the main recreational reason to use cannabis is to get high. I actually think that's the best reason. It's the only reason to use recreational cannabis is to just get high. Agreed?
Yeah. So that brings me into an interesting conversation.
Kelly and I agreed on something. I'm going to do that. Oh, I love it.
An hour. It took us an hour.
I love it. Oh, God.
So
yeah,
the,
what's the question?
The next story is actually about medical cannabis. So right now there's a whole debate that's going on in New Jersey where the question now is, should medical patients be allowed to grow their own cannabis, particularly in areas where growing your own isn't allowed? just because like with COVID, there is supply chain issues, people who might be immunocompromised or might have existing health issues, they can't go out and like line up and go to the dispensaries and stuff like that. So it's like, should they grow their own? And then it brings about that question of how many people are using the rec market for medical purposes, and like how that contributes to the whole conversation.
Yeah, to me, and next week, actually, we're going to have a good friend of mine on from California. His name is Brian Chaplin. He's going to, he actually said something to me about 2 years ago when I was in California on a retreat, when I used to have the cannabis retreats. He says, he used to say, as below is above. So being like the growing of cannabis itself and the roots of cannabis is just as important as the medicine that comes off of the cannabis plant. And so I think growing cannabis is therapeutic in itself. And so I'm totally for people growing their own cannabis. Now you have to do it appropriately. You have to know what you're growing. Most of the people that grow, I'll tell you, they just come and say, I'm growing something. I don't know what the fuck it is. But, that doesn't help if it's medicine. Like you go to a doctor and you say, oh yeah, I just take this pill because I don't know what it is. You got to treat yourself. And I think cannabis is one of those prime examples of something that's awesome because you have the ability to treat yourself with it. And therefore, you should know what you're taking.
Yeah.
So,
and that takes me into the next story. So
Kelly
and I have agreed on two things. I saw a tiny little nod out of her.
I agree. I think that definitely it's therapeutic to do any type of gardening, and patients should have that choice or to assign like a designated grower. But I think that there needs to be commercially available, accessible cannabis for those who are too ill or don't have a family that could grow for them. That needs to be available, and especially for those who need it in a standardized, highly quality controlled setting due to their condition. So I'm all for both.
Yeah, I'm all for both as well, obviously.
Okay, we agreed. Awesome.
We agree on something. That's two things, maybe three things. Okay, last story. What do you got?
So we've talked about this a few times with, the onset of the pandemic. There has been a surge in cannabis purchasing around the globe. So research has actually shown that the rise in sales is actually because people are using cannabis to cope with the stress of the pandemic. So again, like that whole conversation of where you guys were just talking about people self-medicating. Yes. Going to recreational stores and they're purchasing cannabis to kind of self-medicate. And does that bring about the question, like, why aren't more people leaning on the medical market, or should self-medicating just be allowed?
Well, Kelly, you want to go on that, or you want me to take that?
You can go for it. I'll follow suit.
All right. Oh, okay. Fine.
We're getting along.
Yeah, we are getting that. That is very cordial of you. Thank you. Here's my thought. I mentioned it a second ago. I think there's one reason to go to the recreational market, and that is to get high. If there is a reason behind getting high, aside from, hey, I just want to have a good night, you now fall into the medical market. And if you're medicating for any purpose that's that has a medical intent behind it, then I believe you should probably be followed by a physician who can do that. Now, does it have to be a physician, or is there a process to doing it, at least finding the appropriate, until you find the appropriate strain for yourself? The recreational market doesn't have a lot of options when it comes to medicating, period. It's mostly there for high THC and to get high. We already said that's the number one reason. So anything aside from that, I do think that you should probably follow up with a qualified healthcare practitioner, at least until you find a chemovar or a strain that works for you. Once that happens, I fully believe in knowledge transference, and I believe that physicians are here to facilitate your help, but not be that old patriarchy of take your pills and go home. You are in charge of your own medicine. So after that happens and you find that dose, I think it's fully fine if it is available in the lifestyle or adult use market to go for it. But before that, You know, if you're using it for stress, if you're using it for anxiety, and cannabis isn't all that great for managing stress and anxiety, at least in the long term, these are things you need to discuss with a healthcare practitioner first.
I would agree with what Ira said, getting to a place of knowing what strain or combination and dosing is best for you and your condition. I do think, though, that maybe the recreational market could help sort of segue and bridge into the medical by not advising people at the store what to take. I've spent some time in some of the stores around the GTA, and I find that the bud tenders will sometimes make these recommendations just because the patients, whether they realize they're patients or not, are saying, oh yeah, and I also have migraines. Oh, and also my dad has Parkinson's. And these are not qualified medical professionals, although they know a lot about cannabis. They're not anyone to be certified giving out medical advice. So I feel like there should be a better way for the recreational market to guide people into the medical market. But I'm happy that adult use legalization has normalized medical. Medical seems a lot more, using cannabis for medical purposes is a lot more accepted now, even if you're not a recreational consumer yourself. So I am happy about that distinction. It will be interesting to see some countries that just don't have an adult use market, and it's much more of a medical wellness over the counter market, where it's just accessible and accepted, but you don't need to like drive recreational sales because you have a medical and wellness play. So
well, I think we did a really good job here today. We beat this one down. And Kelly, I'm glad we didn't get into any fights. Kelly, anybody you want to shout out? Anything you want us to check out? You want to go for it? Tell us.
First of all, very grateful for the Higher Estate having me. So nice to meet Janelle and obviously spend time with you, Ira. I hope everyone wants to chat more about cannabis and social good.
Where should they go?
They should go to add me on LinkedIn, Kelly Beker, Beker, or they can add me on Instagram, Cannabis Kelly. But definitely check out the Cannabis Education Guild on LinkedIn or Facebook or our website. Like I said, we're taking members in May, and we're just going to continue driving healthy cannabis discourse and social good. And I want as many people in the industry to be a part of it as possible.
Thank you so much for being here. Janelle, anything you want to prop up? Big up.
Honestly, I just want to encourage people to reach out to Kelly and become a part of the initiative, because, I mean, there's only good things that can come from being a part of social good.
Thank you, Janelle. Appreciate it.
Totally. Check out, don't forget to check out cannabis.wiki for all your latest news and updates and entertainment. We got everything you're looking for. We're basically a house that has it all. We're a major cannabis community and a platform that's just growing, and it's amazing to be a part of it. And I can't wait to see all the things that it's doing. Check out the Green Room has an awesome podcast. There's some awesome podcasts on our site. Other people that you got to check out. You got to check out Lester He's Sick. You got to check out Dance Hall. Damn, Derek's done this awesome thing. I love Dance Hall. It's amazing to bring it back, and that's super amazing. Anyway, I love everybody. Hope you're having an awesome time at isolating and just stay connected to people. If you can't physically see them right now, just socially see them. Get on all of these things, and hope you all like my hat today because I thought I was pretty cool in it. Anyway, see you guys next week. We'll see you at the COVID Corner. I'll be doing that. It'll be posted on this coming Monday. Every Monday, you're going to see that. Every Friday, you're going to see a Higher Estate. Don't forget, May 1st, we are going to be going live every morning from 7 to 8 a.m. With the Higher Estate Morning Edition for 1 hour. So that'll be fun, bringing you the latest news. We'll have fun segments. Everything will be fun, and, you know, the usual banter between us. And I'll try not to swear. Mom. Peace.